Leeds Supertram, Edinburgh's trams, London's Crossrail, three recent examples of ambitious public transport projects which ran into difficulty of one sort or another. Time perhaps to think on a more modest scale, like the unique and very successful train service that Adrian Golberg's been on in the West Midlands.
Nothing against Stourbridge, a relatively prosperous but unremarkable town on the western flank of the Black Country, but it's not exactly overrun by tourists. So I'm surprised when I meet Ian, a widower who has travelled 20 miles from Birmingham. He's come to ride on what has been described as the cutest train in England, and I'm here to see the man who designed it. I first met John Parry, a ruddy-faced engineer with white hair underneath a flat cap, more than 20 years ago in an oily industrial shed up the road in Cradley Heath. Back then, he shared his dream of introducing a low-carbon, eco-friendly alternative to the lumbering diesel trains that ran on the mile-and-a-half spur between Stourbridge town centre and Stourbridge Junction, with its mainline connections to Birmingham and beyond. It took a lot of doing. People are resistant to change and wary of what they don't know, he muses. Eventually, after a 2-year trial at Bristol Harbour, followed by a year of Sunday running on the route itself, the authorities were won over. John succeeded in getting his own vehicle made in that oily shed in Cradley Heath on the tracks 7 days a week. Next month, the British Rail Class 139, or Parry People Mover, as it's known locally, will be celebrating a decade in service. So what's so good about it? Well, not much at first sight. As we walk across to Platform 1, it seems almost too dinky for the railway. There's just a single carriage the length of a road coach with bright yellow livery that puts you in mind of a child's painting. The driver doesn't even have a separate cab. It's more like a bus. He sits up front within chatting distance of the paying customers. It looks all a bit, well, Toy Town. But appearances are deceptive. Unlike a railway carriage, this unit sits flush to the platform. I see a passenger in a wheelchair roll straight in, no need for a ramp. And in tech terms, the People Mover is an ingenious piece of kit, a novel kind of hybrid that John describes as a tram train. There's a small engine powered by liquid petroleum gas, which sets in motion a flywheel underneath the seating area. The flywheel captures the energy of the vehicle's braking system as it slows down, then releases it when the driver wants to accelerate, reducing fuel consumption and costs. It's like having a car engine powering a 60-seater vehicle, John explains. Overall, we've halved the running costs compared with the old trains, and we've eliminated diesel fumes altogether. It is a slightly bumpy ride, more to do with the track than the vehicle, I think, but it is only 3 minutes, and commuters have responded positively to the new vehicle. Passenger numbers are estimated to have doubled in a decade to around 600,000 a year, and cancellations are almost unheard of. The route regularly boasts a 99% reliability rate. The old trains were less frequent because their turnaround time was restricted by the rail regulations, John recalls. Those rules don't apply to us, so now it's essentially turn up and go. Ian, the widower from Birmingham, tells me the ride will take him to the bus station right next door to the rail terminus. From there, using his pensioner's pass, he'll explore the delights of villages like Kinver on the rural edges of Stourbridge. He beams his approval of the Parry People Mover. Although it currently only operates on this one rail line, with a few relatively cheap modifications, it could be adapted for urban roads too. Tracks would have to be laid on the carriageway, but the flywheel mechanism means that unlike the modern trams you might see in Birmingham or Manchester, there's no need for costly electrification or overhead wires. John Parry sees its potential for joining up smaller towns and villages to larger transport networks, not only in the UK, but abroad too. All of which begs the question of why, after 10 years in operation, the Parry People Mover hasn't been adopted anywhere else in the UK, never mind abroad. John reflects for a moment. The transport authorities are just terrible. They stick to the conventional wisdom, he laughs. Maybe, like my new friend Ian, all they need is a day out in Stourbridge.
Adrian Golberg ending this edition of From Our Home Correspondent. I'll be back next month with a new set of pieces, so do please join me. Until then, goodbye.